Hi, and welcome back to the Renew You Students YouTube channel. We've been talking about the tale of two kings, how one king disobeyed God, and then God chose another person to be king. But as David, which is the one to be king, served King Saul with, really outstanding marks on all fronts, King Saul got so jealous and angry at him and paranoid that now he has decided to try and kill David and chase him. But we learned in the last week that everybody else was in favor of David. Everybody knew who David was and how he was really a loyal, honest person and loved God with all of his heart. But no one could convince King Saul otherwise. He wanted David dead. So at the end, we found that David just couldn't stay with King Saul anymore. He fled away from King Saul, and that is where our story picks up.
So for the next couple of chapters in 1 Samuel, there's a lot of David is just running far away from Saul, trying to just get away from him and save his life. And there's a lot of King Saul continuously chasing after David for really no apparent reason other than just anger and jealousy. There hasn't been anything that David's done to Saul or in his palace or to his army that would make King Saul react like this, other than the fact that David is a direct threat to King Saul's kingship. And so King Saul just kind of goes in a rage and just kind of keeps chasing after David. Everywhere that David goes, King Saul is basically on his heels the whole way. And then David tries to hide places. He has a bunch of people actually helping him along the way in different areas. But even as David leaves that area and King Saul comes, King Saul pretty much kills anybody who's helped David at all. He's like, well, you've helped this person that I'm trying to kill, so you're going to be dead too. And so it's a really weird segment of chapters because King Saul kind of forgets about everything else in his duty as king and just basically spends all of his time trying to hunt for David and trying to kill David. And it reaches a huge climax a few times in these running chapters where David actually gets the opportunity and he has the wit that he has moments where he could kill King Saul. And so that's what we're going to look at very briefly here.
Yeah, so King Saul decides to go with his men into a cave in order to sleep for a moment and then continue the chase. What King Saul doesn't know is that actually David and his men were already there in the cave. So when they all fell asleep, King David and his men were just right there, and King Saul was in front of them. And so what happens is that the men were like, yes, this is our opportunity. We kill King Saul, and then we can, take over, and this is just what we're supposed to do. But King David knew that King Saul was appointed as king thanks to God, and it wouldn't be a sin. It would be disobedience towards God to kill King Saul. That was not David's duty at that moment. So David said, no, we must spare them, but let's grab things that King Saul has so that we can show him later what had happened. So, this story happens twice in different, a little bit of context. In one moment, they take a part of his robe off, and another one, it is his spear. So, but after they leave, and King Saul wakes up and his men comes out, then David confronts them and says, look what happened. You could have died because of me. I could have killed you and then, taken over and everything. But I am still a loyal servant to you. I am a person who doesn't want to do evil but good. And I've never in any moment tried to usurp you or try to take away that's yours. And King Saul's just terrified at that moment, like, oh man, I realize how stupid I am in trying to chase you, and this is just terrible. I'm really sorry. You know, come back with me. This is going to be great and all that. But at that moment, David doesn't come back with him, because what happens is that every time that Saul says sorry and all of that, the moment later he's like, I want to kill David again because this is terrible. He is a terrible person, and he's obviously out to assert me and take away what is mine. This is essentially really what is this high contrast about someone who wants to do good, someone who wants to be loyal, who wants to follow the heart of God, versus someone who's selfish, who is greedy, paranoid, and will not change away from his evil ways, even though there's moments of maybe regret, remorse, or of realizing for what is wrong. His heart is already so turned away from God and what is right, that this story just will keep repeating until either David or Saul dies.
And so David had everything to gain by killing King Saul, because that would have meant that he was the next king, because God had appointed him as the next king. But David knew that it was more important to trust in God and rely in God than it was to try to be king sooner than God intended. And so there's a key thing in there for us to know, that even if God has told us that we're going to do something, we have to wait in his timing. We can't force our way. We can't force how we want things to end. And it's important for that, because in honoring God, we have to honor his timing as well, and not just what he says is going to come and pass. David understood this. King Saul did not. In fact, he rushed things, which is why he was no longer going to be king, because he didn't follow after God. He wanted to do things quickly in his own way. And this is a huge difference between King Saul and King David, because King David got it. He understood. And so because of that, because of his trust and honoring God, he wasn't going to lay a hand on King Saul, because he wasn't going to be the one that was going to have to kill him in the end either. And so this story actually keeps going, because neither King Saul or King David are dead yet. And King Saul still hates King David. And so in a few short chapters, all of this quickly changes. And so we're going to talk about that on Saturday and next week. And so we'll see you then.
See ya.